Part IV, Chapter 6 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 6. Cromwell and the Commonwealth. Cromwell was born in 1599, being connected by blood with the family of Thomas Cromwell, Earl of Essex, prime minister to Henry VIII. He was educated at Sidney Sussex College, Cambridge, and on his father's death settled down to farm his own lands. He appeared first in public life as a member of Parliament as early as 1628. He had been much with the Puritans, and imbibed their principles and shared their hostility to Romanism. His appearance was plain and ungainly. He was clad in rustic and unfashionable attire. Sir William Harwick says of him that he was inclined at first to treat him with contempt, but, "I lived to see this gentleman, by multiplied successes and by more converse with good company, appear in my own eye of a comely presence and a great and majestic deportment." Another of his contemporaries speaks of him in this picturesque language: "He was a strong man in the dark perils of war. In the high places of the field hope shone in him like a pillar of fire when it had gone out in all others." The execution of Charles I. was not the destruction of the Royalist cause, nor was the new Parliament a unit in support of Cromwell. Though he repeatedly refused a crown, even the simple authority which he exercised as Protector of the Commonwealth was in constant danger. Charles II., son of Charles I., fled to the Continent and joined his mother in Paris. The Scotch Parliament was devoted to the House of Stuart, but the Scotch were still more attached to liberty. They were willing to have Charles II. back again, and so put an end to the Commonwealth, but they wanted to be sure of his conduct. Charles II. was proclaimed king by the Scotch Parliament in 1649, but it was only "on condition of his good behavior," while the Covenanters required him to sign articles of repentance. He was willing to submit to indignity, provided he could gain his father's crown. The army which gathered about him was defeated by Cromwell's army at Worcester in 1651. Charles escaped to France. Cromwell was now supreme in the land. In 1653 he entered the House of Commons and dissolved it in these words: "You are no longer a Parliament." In 1654 he was formally proclaimed Protector of the Commonwealth. England's position was now entirely new. While Cromwell was intensely Puritan, the Puritans did not know how soon the day of retribution would come to them. All classes looked upon the period of his protectorate as a mere armistice in the hot warfare. But the 6 years which elapsed between the proclamation of Cromwell as Protector and the entry of Charles II. into London as king, or from 1654 to 1660, was a period of intense fermentation. Never, in the annals of the world, have events moved with more astounding dispatch or the seeds of liberty ripened with greater rapidity. The colonies in America were rejoicing in their first lessons in religious liberty. The Protestants on the Continent, who had ceased to look to England for sympathy and help, now turned again with confidence. Cromwell's great name commanded respect from Calais to Constantinople. Catholic kings feared to maltreat their Protestant subjects, for they knew not at what hour an English army, by Cromwell's order, might invade their realms. Foreign rulers craved alliance with him. When Spain applied to become an ally, Cromwell demanded as a condition that the Inquisition should be suppressed. No ruler was ever more unjustly censured by his contemporaries, but no hero ever moved more steadily on the path of duty to his own conscience and to the oppressed of all Britain. Milton, who knew him on all sides of his majestic character, paid this just tribute to him: "Cromwell, our chief of men, who through a cloud, not of war only, but detractions rude, guided by faith and matchless fortitude, to peace and truth thy glorious way hath plowed, and on the neck of crowned fortune proud hast reared God's trophies and his work pursued, while Darwen's stream with blood of Scots imbrued, and Dunbar field resounds thy praises loud, and Worcester's laurel wreath. Yet much remains to conquer still. Peace hath her victories no less renowned than war. Milton served Oliver Cromwell 4 or 5 years as his Latin secretary. While he is known to the world as the greatest epic poet produced by England, and the author of Paradise Lost, he was distinguished during the stormy period in which his life was passed, 1608 to 1674, as the strongest defender of liberty in the land. His words for liberty were as powerful as Cromwell's sword strokes. His Areopagitica, or plea for unlicensed printing, was the blast of a trumpet in favor of political and religious liberty. Some of his other prose works were of hardly less value as an educational force for the future of the Anglo-Saxon race in all lands and for all times. Of his prose writings, Macaulay says, "They are a perfect field of cloth of gold. The style is stiff with gorgeous embroidery." Grave doubt was manifested on the appearance of the Paradise Lost. In 1667, when 59 years of age, he sold the copy of this immortal work to Samuel Simmons for £5, but with the provision that the sum should be doubled after 1,300 copies should have been sold. He received the remaining £5, however, but it required 11 years for the publisher to dispose of 3,000 copies. At the Restoration, his prosecution, as a defender of the Protectorate, was ordered. But he escaped by the passage of the Act of Oblivion. He died in 1674. What was of use to know, what best to say could say, to do had done. His actions to his words agreed. His words to his large heart gave utterance due. His heart contained of good, wise, fair, the perfect shape. Milton had been a sufferer in many ways, and blindness was added to his other afflictions. His supreme ambition was to help the English people to larger liberty. We know him best as poet, but the world will love him most as an heroic defender of human rights. End of chapter 6.